Hey Trek Gang, what's going on in this week's episode of the Boeville in Newtown? Well, it's right over here. Stand by and we'll get into what's happening this week. Alright, Trek Gang, so you're probably wondering where I've been for the last two and a half weeks or so. What do you mean where you've been on vacation? I thought that this was a railroad channel. We're supposed to be talking about railroad stuff, model railroad stuff. Come on now. What do you mean? Vacation? Nah. Well, okay, since you brought it up, let's go ahead and talk about the 2-week vacation, and then we'll talk train stuff. Well, thank you. I do appreciate you allowing me to go ahead and talk about the 2-week vacation that I just took, for goodness sakes. We'll get into the railroad stuff. Alright, Track Gang, now that we're done with the Opa Dodge type interruption here, the dual personalities, welcome back to episode 4, or 5, I'm sorry. As you can see, I did switch, obviously, but I've been switching shirts, but this one here is Panama Canal. Get over there. Yeah. So, where was I? What was the whole hubbub about? Well, to be perfectly honest, and if you follow me on Facebook, on the Friends of the Boeville in Newtown, I did put up a blurb of exactly what all went on. Starting, and I'm going to go ahead and take it from the top, because this was a wild vacation. A little bit of a preface here. The wife and I are going to hit 25 years married in November of this year, so this was kind of an early anniversary present, for lack of a better term. We had actually, we've talked about, I actually had planned, or she had actually planned on us doing a Hawaii trip, taking NCL, Norwegian Cruise Line, and going around the Hawaiian Islands back in 21, which didn't happen because of the showstopper. And we just ended up flying out to Hawaii last January and just doing that as a family instead. But this year, well, actually middle of last year, she told me, by the way, I've booked next year's trip. And I'm like, okay, great. What are we doing? Well, we're going to go ahead and take a 2-week cruise down the west coast of California, Mexico, and through the Panama Canal and end up in Miami. We're going to leave from LAX and end up in Miami. Okay, wonderful. So, bear with me. I'm hoping that this doesn't take too long. If it does, if you're really not interested, you can tune out now and go to the end of the video, but because there is some railroad stuff coming up, as my alter ego was saying. Anyway, January the 1st, this is day 1. We fly from BWI to LAX via Dallas-Fort Worth, and I'm going to grab my glasses, because I didn't think about doing that before I got started. Oh, hey, there's everybody. Now, this is where things get a little funny. Not really, but things go a little bit sideways. My bag was delayed by American Airlines and DFW and wouldn't make it to the ship before we left the port of LA. So American Airlines got my bag from Dallas-Fort Worth to LA like 2.5 hours after I got there, and then turned around and sent it to Cabo San Lucas, which was the first port that we were going to hit. So, day 2, January the 28th, we're at sea going down the California-Mexico coast on the Norwegian cruise line, Bliss. If anybody is familiar with cruising, the Bliss is what they call their Breakaway Plus class. It is a big boat. Let's put it that way. 20 decks, and I think they said they can carry, or between passengers and crew, it's just under 5,000 people. If it's at full capacity. It was not at full capacity. It was pretty close, but it wasn't at full capacity. So we're going down the coast. I taught the guest services about the whole issue with the bag. They told me, no problem. We get to Cabo San Lucas. We'll have our porters go over there, pick it up along with a security guy, and they'll bring it to the ship and put it in your stateroom. Perfect. By the way, here's a little care package just to get you through until we get into port. Well, the problem of it is I'm a big guy. I'm sorry. 2X and 3X shirts are probably the norm. They give me an XL. Yeah, it wasn't going to fit. Anyway, so like I said again, nice gesture. There was great stuff. There was good stuff in there. Toothbrush, toothpaste, all the other essentials, but the T-shirt just wasn't going to fit. So we get on day 3, we get to Cabo San Lucas. We went out to what they call the El Arco, and from what I understand from the wife and the daughter, if anybody's actually watched Pirates of the Caribbean, that is one of the things that they show in that movie. And the added bonus of whale watching. Now, I put that in here, but the reality of it was we actually saw the whales as we were going into Cabo San Lucas, and then of course we took a boat tour, which took us back out, and we saw them again. So that was kind of nice. And then after that, we went on we went to a glass blowing shop, and it was kind of neat to see how they make that kind of stuff. I've never actually seen glass blowing done live. I've seen it done on TV and such, but I've never been in front of those furnaces. I don't know how the heck they do that down there when it's 100 degrees outside, and that furnace is blasting to like close to 4,000 degrees. So anyway, after that, they go ahead, they take us back down to the pier, and we get on the tender. We go back to the ship, go up to the stateroom, and lo and behold, there sits my bag. Yeehaw! I'm a happy camper. And not only that, but no sooner did we get up to the room, like 5-10 minutes after we were in the room, guest services called me to ask me if that was indeed my bag, which obviously it was. So anyway, that was really nice. I really appreciated that. So that was all day 3. So now we're on to day 4, which was January the 30th. We headed down to Puerto Vallarta, which was a neat place. We took a hiking trip, and then we were taken to what I called an oasis in the hills. Basically, what it was a tequila manufacturing area. They had their own little resort per se, where you could taste their tequila and so on and so forth. So you were on their property, but you didn't actually see the brewery where they make it, or the distillery where they make it, but you got to taste it and so on and so forth, which I didn't do because, as most of us know, I don't drink. So, oh yeah, that was the other thing though. In Puerto Vallarta, they put us on one bus. That bus made it maybe 5 minutes, and that bus broke down, so they ended up putting us onto what looked like a safari truck. That was fun. 80-some degrees outside, and we're on this in this truck that's wide open. It's like, this is great. So anyway, day 5, January the 31st. We're down now back out to sea, and we're headed down to Acapulco, however you want to say it. So day 6, February the 1st, Acapulco, saw the cliff divers, and we're taken to a Mexican restaurant for lunch. This was the first place, well, outside of Cabo San Lucas, that was uneventful. Nothing strange happened this one. So now we're going to go on to day 7, which is February the 2nd. We were at sea, headed to Guatemala. So on day 8, February the 3rd, we're at Puerto Quetzal, Guatemala. And one of the things that my wife forgot to tell me is that where we actually ended up going into the port, a couple miles away, it was probably more than a couple, but a few miles away, there's like 3 active volcanoes, one of which was spewing smoke. So that was fun. I wish I could have been there at night or seen it at night to see if there was actually any lava coming out, but I don't think there was. That would have been a neat picture. So what we did there is they took us into a place that's a zoo. Somebody, I forgot the whole history of it, but somebody down there decided that they were going to build this zoo took a lot of pictures of some animals that would obviously not be so much indigenous to the area down there, but it was still a neat trip. I mean, it was a neat place to go. That one there was outside of the active volcanoes was uneventful. So now we're up to day 9, which is February the 4th, and that's a sea day. We were headed to Panama. Now, I'm going to stop here for just 1 second because I know people are going to ask, hey, you went to Panama. Did you happen to talk to Roy Smith? I'm going to get to that. I'm going to leave you hanging for a little bit longer. So day 10, February the 5th, we're still at sea, headed to Panama, and we get not too far from Panama, and the captain comes over and says, unfortunately, folks, there's been a minor change in plans. He said, because of the fact of how tall the ship is, we have to go under the Bridge of the Americas at low tide. So what the company, NCL, decided to do is they talked to the canal people, and they've got us in line to go under the Bridge of the Americas at 10:30 p.m. and then go through the Pacific side locks at 4:30 in the morning, which means that we're not going to have time to stop in Panama City. Bummer. Unfortunately, I never had a chance to reach out to Roy because even before we went on the trip, it didn't sound like we were going to have a whole lot of time in Panama. And then, of course, once we got down there, we had no time. So what they ended up doing is we ended up anchoring up in a place called Balboa Harbor, which is outside of the Bridge of the Americas. They took on fuel, and then they sent us into the canal zone. So that was how that went. So no, unfortunately, Roy, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about it, and I wouldn't have had time to catch up with you anyway, buddy. I'm sorry. We'll have to try some other time. So anyway, like I said, we passed into the Bridge of Americas somewhere around 10:30, and what was neat is from my stateroom balcony, I took pictures, and I could hear the people on deck 16, which is the pool deck. They had a party. They had parties going all night. Well, not all night, but every night on that deck. And of course, and this is one of those old military or naval things. Anytime you pass under a bridge, everybody screams. So that's what you could hear as we were going under the bridge. People at the front or the bow, all the way to the stern. It was kind of neat. So anyway. Now we're on to day 11, which was February the 6th. We're now in the Panama Canal. Like I said, 4:30 in the morning. We started on the Pacific side locks, and then we finished those at 7 a.m. Which what I ended up doing is I went to bed right after we got underneath the Bridge of the Americas. I went to sleep for a couple hours. The alarm goes off at like 20 minutes after 4. I go outside, and we're just outside the locks. And I'm like, oh, great, cool, I didn't miss it. Yeah, well, it still took us a bit, but once we got in, and I took a couple of pictures, then I went back to bed. And then we got up around 7, and I caught the end of, us coming out of the locks. So that was neat. So then we go through the upper canal, or the rivers, and then we get into Gatun Lake at like 2:30 or 12:30 in the afternoon. They move, or actually 12 o'clock. We got to the Atlantic side locks, and at 12:30 we started our transit through. Now this is where the next little hiccup comes. The second set I think it was the second to the last lock. For whatever reason, the door didn't want to open up all the way the first time, so they had to close it part way and then open it back up again. Something, I guess, got jammed. Now, if you're familiar with the Panama Canal, there's actually three sets of locks now. You have the original 2 locks, which are the older ones, and then you have the new locks, which is the third set. The third set's actually for the bigger ships. I think up to like 1,400 feet. And so on and so forth. Well, with our ship, the ship that we were on, it was just under 1,100 feet long, and when it was inside the locks, it had about 18 feet to either side when it was inside the locks. The captain was actually asked at one point, have you ever hit the wall in the locks? And he's like, No, I've never hit it. He said, they said if we center it up, he says, we'll have about 18 feet to either side. He said, now if it's really windy, he says, you can actually lay the ship up against the wall. He says, but I don't like to do that because that marks up the ship, and I don't like marks on the ship. So he says, we try to avoid that. So, like I said, we had an issue with that one set of locks, and then we finally get out into the Caribbean. And we start heading to Colombia, which is our next stop. So we on day 12, which was February the 7th, we hit Cartagena, Colombia. There we took a tour of the walled city and heard about the history of the English and Spanish when they were fighting the pirates and the conquistadors and the privateers and the crusaders and, so on and so forth. So neat tour, neat place. It was warm, let me tell you. Phew. So now we're on to day 13, which was February the 8th. We're at sea, headed to Jamaica. Day 14, which is February the 9th, Jamaica Mon. Went to a place called Bamboo Beach and spent a couple hours there tasting local food and drinks while sitting on the beach. That was neat. It was like a 4-hour tour. We got on the bus at like 7:30 in the morning. We came back at like 2 in the afternoon, because it took like 45 minutes to get from where the ship was to where that was. But that was neat. That was nice. Very relaxing. Day 15, which was February the 10th, it's a sea day. We're now headed to Miami. And then we get into more fun. I swear. So day 16, February the 11th, we're in Miami. It took us a bit to get off the ship. I'm not going to point fingers. I don't think it was the cruise line's fault. I think there was some other things involved, but I'm not going to go into that. So they get us on a bus. They take us from the bus from the port of Miami over to Miami International, which is kind of funny how that airport's named. If anybody's ever been there, it's actually MIA. It's like, that's not a good omen. So we've got to fly from Miami to Charlotte, which is my least favorite airport. If anybody's ever flown in and out of Charlotte, North Carolina's airport, I despise. It never fails. Every time that I've been there, I end up coming in on one of the A gates, and I have to go to either the D or the E gates, which are on the complete opposite side of the airport. And normally it takes you like a half an hour, 45 minutes to get from one side to the other, and you've only got, there's like 35 or 40 minutes between the planes. It's like, great, thanks. So here we go again. So we go from Miami to Charlotte, made the transfer to the plane for BWI. We actually had 15, 20 minutes to spare. I don't know how we managed that one. I think it's because there was some weather in the area and the planes were a little bit behind. So anyway, we go ahead, we get on the plane. The plane in Charlotte backs away from the whatever you want to call it, the terminal, and goes and all of a sudden it just stops. And I'm like, wait a minute, are we on the taxi? Where are we? And I'm looking around and I'm like, what the heck's going on? And the captain comes over and says there's a ground stoppage at BWI, and this was at 6:15. He says, we're probably not going to leave until 7:05. You gotta be kidding me. So actually, in reality, they finally cleared the ground stoppage. I guess it was about 6:35. So it wasn't too bad, but we were still delayed by like 20 minutes. So we go ahead and we get to BWI and we get off the plane, and hey, lo and behold, both bags show up at BWI. Great. Then Dawn goes to call the hotel where we parked the car to get the shuttle to come get us, and they had some sort of event at the hotel, and they didn't have a shuttle for us. So it's like, great. This just keeps getting better. So we get a taxi that takes us from the airport to the hotel. And we get the car, and they had already told Dawn, they said, look, when you get here, just get a receipt, come inside, and we'll reimburse you. Fine. So that's what we ended up doing. We get in the car, we come home. Now, that's pretty much the end of that. Now, one of the things that happened the weekend before, daughter texts us and says that, guess what, the washing machine died. I'm like, I just can't go on. I can't go anywhere. So she took care of getting a new one ordered. It actually came in Monday. I had actually taken off Monday anyways because I was like, I'm coming back late Saturday. I want 2 days before I go back to work. It's just not, I'm not going to do that quick turnaround. So I'm glad I didn't, because that wasn't the only problem we had. So Sunday, the wife and daughter, they go ahead, they pack up the dirty laundry, they go up to the local laundromat, and they take care of that stuff. I stay home here, get caught up on emails and Facebook and things of that nature, and try to get caught up on some of the YouTube things too, which didn't happen. And so Monday, my wife goes to work, and she's been battling some sort of a respiratory thing for like a couple of weeks now, but actually before we even went on the trip. It wasn't too bad. She kind of got over it a little bit before we went, but then coming back, it came back with a vengeance. So she actually went to work in the morning for a couple hours, and they told her, why don't you just go over to the patient first and get yourself checked out, because that doesn't sound good. So she did. Needless to say, she's showstopper negative. That came back. All those tests came back negative. She has basically it's a respiratory thing. So they gave her medicine for that. So she's doing better. But she gets back to the house after all that, and I'm like, well, I need to go to the store. Smiley face, because I still hadn't gotten anything for Valentine's Day. I'm a pessimist. I'm sorry. It's just the way I am. So I go out to start my truck. I get in the truck, I close the door, I turn the key, engine starts up, no problem. I'm like, why the heck do I smell gas? So I open the door, and when I opened the door, I could see gas running down my driveway. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I shut the truck off, and I go up underneath, and I'm looking to see if I can figure out where the heck it's coming from, and I don't see it. So it's like as soon as I shut the truck off, it stopped. I'm like, oh, great. And then it hit me. I had seen, long before I left, I had noticed that squirrels like to run around the front yard. And, well, needless to say, they came and picked up the truck Monday night, took it to the shop. Shop called me Tuesday and said, yeah, the squirrels not only chewed the gas line, but they also chewed the wiring harness, and you're looking at about a $1,500 bill. I'm like, great. So they were like, well, the thing is that's usually covered under insurance. You might want to call them and see if they cover it and go from there. I'm like, all right, fine. So that's what we ended up doing. So now we're just waiting for the adjuster to get out there, take a look at it, make sure that they can come to agreement on the price, and then I can get my truck back. So needless to say, every time I look outside right now and I don't see the big red machine, I get ticked off. But at any rate, so now let's go ahead and switch gears and get into some railroad stuff. What do you say? All right, so now that we're done talking about the vacation, let's go ahead and actually talk about some train-related things. First off, obviously, over the last 2.5 weeks or so, there's been absolutely nothing done to the railroad. In fact, I think I may have actually mentioned it at the end of, I guess it was episode 4. I'm going to probably start by doing maintenance on the locomotives first off, or something of that nature. I do want to work on the bridge a little bit too, so we'll see which way I decide to go with that. But I do want to get into a bit of a mail call. First things first, the Fultz-Bailey Model Railroad sent me a package while I was on vacation to the Boeville and Newtown Model Railroad. I'm going to actually pull this out of the box because this is my passenger car for Sidetrack Sunday. He did a very good job with it. Thank you, Mr. Bailey. I do appreciate it. We obviously need to sync up on that, but I'm very happy with that. That'll be a great addition to the railroad, and expect to see that once I go ahead and get done some of the other things. Today, actually the other day, I went ahead and I ordered some stuff from via Amazon. And I know some folks are going to laugh about this, but that's perfectly fine. You can laugh all you want. I actually ordered up a pair of re-railers. These here are movable, obviously, so that I can put the cars back on the track, back in the two staging or the two hidden yards. I've got one that Mantua made years ago. It's an OK unit or an OK piece. It's a little short for some of the newer equipment. I understand that these may not be too much better, but considering the fact that they're these are made out of normal plastic, I can always add plastic to them. The other one is made out of, I have no idea what that thing's made out of. So that came from Amazon. And one other thing that came from Amazon, actually this one here actually came in an Amazon package. I was surprised. But I picked myself up 50 foot of 16 gauge wire. Now, a lot of folks are probably asking, why did you buy more 16 gauge wire? I mentioned again, either last year or earlier this year, I'm in the process of putting in a bus line for the trolley or the interurban system, and I didn't have any more wire left. And I took some measurements and figured it out that it was like 32 foot actually on the layout, and to get from the layout to the control panel over at the dispatcher station would take it up to about 45 feet. So I'm going to have about 5 feet of excess. So we'll see how that plays. I'm hoping I didn't screw that up. But other than that, that's what's going to be coming. Is going to be some obvious work on the bridges or the bridge scene. Doing some more scenery, and then I'm thinking what I may end up doing is while I'm doing that scenery work, while I'm waiting for paint and plaster and stuff like that to dry, I can also go back and start doing some maintenance on the locomotives. Like I said, I think the last time I did it was around February, March of last year. I'm trying to get it to a point where I'm going to do it a little bit more often. Because of the fact that I am running the railroad a little bit more than I used to. So once a year isn't quite going to cut it. I think I'm going to go down to probably at least every 6 months. I may try to do every 3 months. That sounds excessive, but we'll see. I mean, like I said, at the other points of that, it's going to be when they start having issues is when they'll go back to the bench. But for overall, checking lubrication and cleanliness of the wheels and things of that nature, I think I'm going to try and start doing every 6 months. The one thing I can do, or I will give an update on, is the fact that, he had that whole thing over the last year and a half where everybody was talking about, odorless mineral spirits and the no-ox ID and all the other cleaning stuff. And I can tell you that I am extremely satisfied and rather surprised. I think I cleaned the track a little over a year ago, and knock on wood, I haven't had to clean it since. And I'm real. I don't know if that's got something to do with the temperature control down here, or if of course, now I didn't use the no-ox. Don't get me wrong. The only thing I used was the mineral spirits. I did not use any of the no-ox, and the tracks have stayed really clean. In fact, most of the locomotives' wheels are rather clean, and of course, I'm still running plastic wheels on 98% of the stuff down here too. So, go figure. But anyway, you all know the deal. Wait for the highball. Green tracks ahead. We'll catch you all next time. Be safe. God bless. We will see ya.